When I look back now, it almost feels unreal, like a chapter of my life I accidentally walked into and didn't know how to get out of. My name is Daniel, and at the time I was just a 22-year-old college student living with my mom, Linda. Life was simple, predictable, and in many ways, safe. My mom worked long hours, so our home often felt quiet and a little too still. I didn't complain much, but I guess that silence had left me looking for someone to talk to, someone who would notice me in ways I didn't even realize I needed. That's when my mom's friend, Rebecca, stepped into the picture. Rebecca had been around for years, dropping by to visit my mom, sometimes staying for coffee, sometimes just a quick hello. She was in her early 40s, a woman with a warm smile and a kind of charm that made you feel comfortable almost instantly. She was recently divorced, though I didn't pay much attention to that detail at first. To me, she was simply Mom's friend. Someone older, wiser, and friendly enough to talk to me when she visited. It started small. She'd ask me how college was going, whether I was keeping up with my classes, or what hobbies I was into. Unlike most adults, she actually seemed to care about the answers. I found myself opening up a little more each time. Before long, our conversations weren't just about school or surface-level things. They turned into talks about music, about how I wanted to travel one day, and about how sometimes I felt like I was drifting through life without direction. Rebecca always had something encouraging to say, something that made me feel seen in a way that even my mom, despite her love for me, didn't always manage. One evening, after my mom had gone upstairs to take a call, Rebecca and I sat in the living room, chatting about my plans for after graduation. She leaned back in her chair, smiling, and said, "You're really thoughtful, Daniel. Don't let anyone ever make you feel small for that." It was such a simple sentence, but it stuck with me. Compliments like that weren't things I heard often, especially not from someone older. That night, I caught myself thinking about our conversation more than I should have, and the next time she visited, I found myself waiting to see if she'd ask me how I was doing again. She did. She always did. Eventually, Rebecca started visiting even when my mom wasn't around. Sometimes she'd say she just stopped by to drop something off or to wait until my mom returned, but instead of leaving, she'd stay and talk with me. At first, I thought nothing of it. Why would I? It felt harmless. But one afternoon, as she prepared to leave, she paused at the door and said softly, "Daniel, let's just keep our talks between us. Your mom might not understand. She's protective of you, and I don't want her to take this the wrong way." I remember freezing for a moment, not sure how to respond. It wasn't like we were doing anything wrong. We were just talking. Still, the way she said it, like it was a secret we now shared, made my chest tighten. I nodded anyway, not wanting to make it awkward. But later that night, lying in bed, I kept replaying her words in my head. Why should Mom know? Why did this suddenly need to be hidden? That was the moment things shifted. Our conversations didn't change overnight, but the way I looked at them did. Every laugh, every shared glance, every story Rebecca confided in me suddenly felt heavier, more private. It was as if we had created a little world of our own, one where my mom wasn't allowed in. And even though a part of me knew this was dangerous, another part of me was drawn in by it. Rebecca was easy to talk to, but more than that, she seemed to understand me in ways I didn't even understand myself. She'd ask me about my dreams and then tell me hers, about how she felt alone since her divorce, about how she wished she had someone who truly listened. I didn't realize it then, but she was filling a space in my life I hadn't even known was empty. Still, the secrecy weighed on me. I'd sit at dinner with my mom, nodding along to her stories from work, but in the back of my mind, I'd hear Rebecca's voice telling me, "Don't tell your mom." I laughed when I was supposed to laugh, smiled when I was supposed to smile, but something had changed. For the first time, I was carrying a secret from my mom, one that felt heavier than anything I'd experienced before. I didn't know it then, but that was just the beginning. The more I tried to ignore it, the more the secret pulled me in, slowly reshaping the way I saw Rebecca, the way I saw my mom, and even the way I saw myself. And though I told myself it was just harmless friendship, deep down, I knew it was becoming something else entirely. The more time I spent talking to Rebecca, the more I found myself waiting for the next chance we'd cross paths. What used to be casual conversations turned into moments I secretly looked forward to, even planned for. I told myself it was just friendship, nothing more, but somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew it wasn't that simple anymore. Rebecca had a way of making the world feel lighter, almost like she could take away the weight I didn't even know I was carrying. She'd ask me questions no one else ever asked, questions about what I feared, what I wanted from life, what kept me awake at night. And when I answered, she listened, really listened like my word mattered. It's hard to explain, but after a while, I began to crave that attention. One afternoon, when my mom had been called in to work last minute, Rebecca stopped by with coffee for both of us. She handed me the cup with a smile and said, "Don't get used to this. I don't spoil everyone." I laughed, but a part of me felt warm inside, like I was someone special to her. We sat at the kitchen table for hours that day, talking about her past. She told me about her divorce, how lonely her house felt now, and how she missed having someone she could trust. As she spoke, her voice cracked just slightly, and for the first time, I saw her not as my mom's friend, but as a person carrying pain she hid from the world. When she wiped at her eyes, I instinctively reached across the table, resting my hand near hers. She didn't move away. Instead, she looked at me and smiled through the tears. "You're easy to talk to, Daniel," she whispered. "Don't ever change that." That moment stayed with me, replaying in my head long after she left. The secrecy became more intense after that. She reminded me often, almost casually, "Remember, this is just between us." Sometimes she'd laugh when she said it, like it was no big deal, but the words carried weight. I could feel the distance growing between me and my mom, even though she hadn't noticed anything yet. Every time Rebecca and I spoke, I felt guilty, but every time we didn't, I felt something missing. Days turned into weeks, and our talks became longer, more personal. She'd tell me about the mistakes she thought she had made in life, about the chances she never took. And I started telling her things I had never admitted to anyone, not even my closest friends. I told her about the pressure I felt to succeed, the fear of letting people down, the way I sometimes felt invisible. She didn't just listen, she reassured me, telling me I was capable, strong, and more mature than I gave myself credit for. But with every conversation, the line blurred a little more. What had started as harmless friendship now felt like something deeper, something I didn't know how to define. I caught myself thinking about her at random times, wondering when I'd see her again, what she'd say next. And every time I thought about telling my mom, the words Rebecca had said would echo in my head. "She won't understand." The guilt grew heavier. I'd sit across from my mom at dinner, nodding as she told me about her day, all while hiding the fact that her best friend and I were sharing secrets behind her back. Sometimes I'd convince myself that it wasn't really wrong, that I was just being a good listener to someone who needed it. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. One night, Rebecca called me. Her voice was shaky as she said, "I just needed someone to talk to. I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts tonight." Without thinking twice, I listened. For over an hour, she poured her heart out about her fears of the future, how she worried she'd never find happiness again. I tried to comfort her, but the entire time, I felt the weight of how far things had come. After we hung up, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, asking myself why she had chosen me. Why me of all people? And more importantly, why was I letting this happen? I told myself it was harmless, that we hadn't crossed any real lines. But in my heart, I knew emotional lines were being crossed every single day. I started to feel trapped, caught between two worlds. On one side was my mom, who trusted me completely and had no idea what was happening under a roof. On the other was Rebecca, who treated me like I was someone who mattered more than anyone else. And in the middle was me, stuck carrying a secret that was quickly becoming too heavy to bear. I didn't know it yet, but the choices I was making would soon lead to consequences I couldn't escape. The deeper I sank into the secret, the harder it became to imagine ever going back to the way things were. I didn't realize how much the secret was changing me until I noticed the way I started avoiding my mom's eyes. Simple conversations at the dinner table felt heavier, almost like every word I spoke carried a hidden weight behind it. My mom trusted me, maybe more than I deserved, and every time I laughed with her, I felt like a liar. The truth was, I was carrying a part of my life she had no idea about, and that knowledge gnawed at me like a shadow that wouldn't go away. Rebecca, on the other hand, was beginning to act differently. There were days when she seemed warm and welcoming, eager to talk, and other days when she grew distant, like she suddenly remembered the danger of what we were doing. I could see the conflict in her eyes, too. Sometimes she'd sigh mid-conversation, almost as if she wanted to say something but stopped herself. Once, after we had been talking for hours, she looked at me and whispered, "This can't last forever." I laughed nervously, pretending I didn't understand, but I knew exactly what she meant. The truth is, I had become dependent on her. She was the first person I thought about in the morning and the last person on my mind at night. But at the same time, I knew the foundation of it all was wrong. My mom was still in the dark, and every passing day made the secret more dangerous. The tension built up so much that even small things began to unravel. I'd hesitate when my mom asked me who I had been talking to on the phone, or why I came home late, or why I seemed distracted. I had no good answers, and even though she never pushed too hard, I could sense her suspicions slowly growing. The breaking point came unexpectedly. One evening, my mom was supposed to be working late, and Rebecca had come over, saying she just wanted to drop something off. We ended up sitting in the living room, talking as usual. The conversation grew serious. Rebecca admitted she felt guilty, that maybe she had crossed a line with me, that we had created something that shouldn't exist. Before I could respond, the sound of the front door opening cut through the room. My mom had come home early. The panic that rushed through me in that moment is hard to describe. Rebecca jumped up, trying to make it seem casual, but the look on my mom's face when she walked in said everything. She didn't yell. She didn't accuse. She just looked at the two of us, her eyes narrowing, confusion and hurt mixing together. The silence was louder than any words. Rebecca quickly made an excuse about needing to leave and slipped out the door, leaving me standing there with my mom's eyes locked on me. That night, my mom didn't ask me anything directly. She just moved around the house, quietly, the air between us heavy and tense. But I knew she was wondering, and I knew she didn't believe the excuses I wanted to come up with. That silence broke something inside me. For the first time, I realized how deeply the secret had damaged not only my relationship with Rebecca, but also the trust one had with my mom. After that, things changed. Rebecca stopped coming around. She didn't call, didn't text, didn't show up at the house anymore. It was as if she had vanished, leaving me with nothing but memories and regrets. At first, I felt abandoned, like she had walked away when I needed her most. But slowly, I began to understand why she had chosen to disappear. She was right. Continuing down that path would only destroy everyone involved. The weeks that followed were some of the hardest I've ever lived through. My mom never confronted me directly about what she had seen, but the distance between us was obvious. Conversations were shorter. The warmth that used to be there felt replaced by caution, like she wasn't sure who I was anymore. I wanted to tell her everything to explain, but the words never came. All I could do was carry the weight of my choices in silence. Looking back, I've realized that not every betrayal comes from actions you can see. Sometimes it comes from the secrets you hide, the ones that erode trust slowly until there's nothing left. What I had with Rebecca wasn't just friendship, it was an emotional connection that crossed boundaries it never should have. And while it might not have gone further in the ways people imagine, it was still enough to cause damage I couldn't undo. The hardest part is knowing that all of it could have been avoided if I had just walked away the moment she told me, "Don't tell your mom." That was the warning, the sign that what we were doing wasn't right. But I ignored it, blinded by the attention, the feeling of being wanted, of being special. In chasing that, I lost something far more valuable, the trust of the person who mattered most. If there's one thing I've learned, It's that secrets always come with a price. They may feel small at first, almost harmless, but over time, they grow heavy enough to break you. I thought I had gained something meaningful in those hidden conversations, but in the end, all I was left with was guilt, silence, and a fractured bond with my mom. And no matter how much time passes, I don't think I'll ever forget the lesson. Some doors, once opened, should never have been touched in the first place.